The smell of cedar and pine sap had always meant home to me. Growing up in a small town outside of Kelowna, our family had a cottage on the lake that my grandparents built with their own hands in the early 70s. My grandfather had cut the timber himself. My grandmother had painted the shutters by hand, a deep forest green that she repainted every spring without fail until the year she couldn't anymore. That cottage was the place where I learned to swim, where I caught my first fish with my grandfather on a cold October morning, where I sat on the porch every August and watched the Perseids fall over the water. It was the place I had always believed would be part of my life forever. I was 31 years old, standing in the gravel parking lot of Street Andrews Presbyterian in downtown Kelowna, holding my 6-year-old son Noah's hand, when my aunt stepped out of the side door of the church and walked toward us with a smile that didn't quite make it to her eyes. "Oh good, you made it," she said. Something in the way she said it, the faint lift of surprise, like she hadn't actually expected us, made me go still. "Of course we made it," I said. "The rehearsal is at 4. "Right. Yes." She glanced down at Noah, who was wearing the small navy vest we had pressed that morning and holding the ring-bearer pillow he had been practicing with for 2 weeks. He had been walking up and down our hallway in Penticton with that pillow, very serious, very careful, asking me every night before bed whether he was doing it right. "Am I holding it straight, Mama?" "You're holding it perfectly. Grandma said the rings could fall off if I tilt it." "The rings will be tied on, Bug. They won't fall." He had accepted this but continued practicing anyway, because that was the kind of kid he was. Thorough, little worried about things. Exactly the kind of child who takes a job seriously when someone trusts him with one. My aunt was still looking at him with that same uncomfortable expression when my mother appeared in the doorway behind her. I knew immediately. The way you know things in your body before your brain has finished processing them. My mother had a particular face she made when she had done something she knew was wrong but had decided to stand behind anyway. Her chin went slightly forward. Her eyes went slightly away. I had been reading that face my whole life. "Rachel," she said, "I was going to call you this afternoon." "We're here now," I said. "The rehearsal starts in 20 minutes. She stepped down from the door and walked toward us across the gravel, and my aunt quietly disappeared back inside like smoke. "There's been a small change," my mother said, "with the processional. Your brother and Stephanie talked it over, and they've decided they want the ring bearer to be Stephanie's nephew. He's 4, and it just made more sense with the photos, with the color palette they've chosen. He has the same coloring as the bridal party." I looked at my mother. I looked at Noah. He was looking up at her with his head tilted the way he did when he was trying to understand something that didn't make sense to him yet. "But I've been practicing," he said. My mother crouched down briefly. "I know you have, sweetheart. You did a wonderful job practicing." "Then why?" "Noah." I squeezed his hand once and he stopped. Not because I needed him to stop for my sake, but because I needed 10 seconds to decide whether I was going to say what I actually wanted to say in front of him. "This was decided when?" I asked. "Recently. My brother asked Noah to be his ring bearer in March. It is now the 2nd week of July. Stephanie's family situation has changed. Her nephew is visiting from out east and she wanted to include a child she sees twice a year over the nephew who lives 40 minutes away and has been carrying that pillow around for 4 months. "Rachel, please don't make this." "Don't make this what?" I said. "Don't make this the thing it actually is?" Noah was watching me. He understood more than I wanted him to in that moment. He was 6, not 2. He knew that whatever was happening was not good, and that it had something to do with him. My mother stood back up and lowered her voice. "Your brother just needs tonight to go smoothly. Stephanie's family has come a long way, and there's already tension with her parents, and he just can't have any added." "Added what?" I said quietly. "Say it." She looked past my shoulder toward the parking lot. "He can't have any added complications," she said. I stood very still. Behind me, I heard my husband Daniel's footsteps on the gravel. He had been parking the car and had walked up in time to catch the last part of the conversation. I didn't turn around. I knew he was there the same way I always knew where he was in a room. He didn't say anything. He waited. "Tell my brother congratulations," I said. "We won't be staying." "Rachel." I was already crouching down in front of Noah. I held both his hands in mine, and I looked at him directly the way I had learned to do when something needed to be said to him clearly and without apology. "Hey," I said. "You know what? I think we should go get gelato. The place on Bernard Avenue with the mango sorbet you like." He studied my face for a long moment with those careful dark eyes. "Are you sad, Mama?" "I'm okay. Are you okay?" He thought about it. "Uncle Derek said I was going to be the ring bearer." "I know he did. I practiced a lot." "I know. You were going to be incredible." I smoothed the front of his vest. "What do you say? Mango sorbet? We can sit by the water. He looked down at the pillow in his hands and then back up at me. Can I still keep the pillow? Absolutely, you can keep the pillow. Daniel took Noah's other hand, and we walked back across the gravel to the car. I didn't look at my mother. I didn't look at the door of the church. I kept my eyes forward, and my jaw set, and I focused on the weight of Noah's small hand in mine. We drove in silence down Abbott Street toward the waterfront. Noah had the pillow in his lap in the back seat and was very quiet, looking out the window at the lake glittering in the afternoon heat. "Mama," he said, as we pulled into a parking spot near the boardwalk. "Does Uncle Derek not want me there?" I turned around to look at him. His face was calm, genuinely curious, the way children are when they ask the questions adults spend years avoiding. "Uncle Derek loves you," I said. "Grown-ups sometimes make decisions that have nothing to do with the people they love. This is not about you. It is never, ever about you." He considered this. "Okay," he said, in the way children say okay when they have decided to trust you even though they're not totally convinced. "Okay," he said again, more firmly, and unbuckled his seatbelt. We sat at a bench near the water and ate gelato while the paddle boats moved slowly across Okanagan Lake and a group of teenagers played volleyball on the grass. Daniel got pistachio. I got nothing because I wasn't hungry, and then I ate half of Daniel's because I was hungrier than I thought. Noah finished his mango sorbet with total concentration, got some on his vest, and declared it a successful afternoon. He was exactly right. It was a successful afternoon, and I was not fine, not even slightly, but I was holding it together, and that was enough. We had been at the waterfront for about 25 minutes when my phone rang. I looked at the screen. My father. I almost didn't answer. My father had been at that church. He had been there when my mother walked out to the parking lot and told me my son had been replaced. He had been there, and he had not come out. He had not sent a single message. He had not called when we left. Whatever he wanted to say right now, I was not confident I had the bandwidth to hear it. Daniel looked at my phone, then at me, said nothing, waited. I answered, "Rachel." My father's voice was different from what I expected. Not careful and managed, the way it usually was when our family had a situation. It was tight, barely controlled. The voice of a man who had made a decision and was moving toward it. "Where are you right now?" "The waterfront. Boardwalk on Bernard." "How long would it take you to get back to the church?" "Dad, I'm not going back there. After what just happened, I'm not going to walk back in and sit there while—" "Rachel." His voice cut through mine. Not loud. Absolute. "I need you to come back. Not for the rehearsal. Not for Derek. I need you to trust me and come back to this church right now." I looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at me. There was something in my father's voice that I had not heard before. Not in 31 years. It wasn't anger exactly. It was something more settled than anger. Something that had been building for a long time and had finally found its direction. "Okay," I said. "We're coming back." I ended the call. "Turn around," I told Daniel. He didn't ask why. He got up, balled up the napkins, held out a hand to Noah. "What do you say, bud? One more stop before dinner." "Is there more gelato at the stop?" Noah asked. "Probably not at this specific location," Daniel said. "But I will personally guarantee gelato at some point this evening." "Okay," Noah said, and took his hand. My father was waiting in the parking lot when we pulled in. He wasn't standing near the door. He was down at the edge of the lot, away from the other cars, in the shadow of the big spruce trees that lined the property. He was still in his church clothes, his jacket open, and he looked, I don't know exactly how to describe it. He looked like a man who had put something down that he had been carrying for a very long time. There was something both lighter and more serious about him at the same time. He saw Noah and walked toward us and held his arms out. And Noah ran to him without any hesitation at all, the way he always did. And my father lifted him the way he did when Noah was smaller, which was increasingly difficult because Noah was getting tall, and held him for a long moment. "Hey, my guy," he said. "Hi, Grandpa." My father set him down and looked at him seriously. "I have a project for you. There's a garden around the back of the church with a fountain, and I think there might be frogs near the base of it. Daniel, would you mind taking this one on a frog-finding mission?" Noah gasped as though this was the most significant assignment he had ever been given. Daniel gave me a look that said, "I'm right here." He took Noah's hand and they disappeared around the side of the building, Noah already describing the frog-catching method he had apparently developed and tested. My father and I stood in the gravel in the late afternoon light. The sound of voices drifted from inside the church. The rehearsal had started, apparently, without us. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I was in the back of the church when your mother went out to the parking lot. I heard what she said to you. I heard all of it." He paused. "I didn't come out. I told myself it wasn't the moment, that Derek's rehearsal didn't need any more disruption, that I would talk to your mother privately later." He looked at me directly. That was wrong. And you and Noah deserved better from me this afternoon. I believed him. And I also felt the complicated, particular grief of being told you deserved something that you didn't get, and knowing that the apology, however sincere, couldn't entirely close the distance between what happened and what should have happened. Thank you for saying that, I said. There's more, he said. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and took out his phone. He turned the screen toward me. It was a text thread, my brother's name at the top. The message was dated 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. While I had been buying Noah new dress shoes and checking the weather forecast for Kelowna and confirming our hotel booking while all of that had been happening, my brother had sent this message to our mother. Mom, can you handle the Rachel situation for the rehearsal? I don't want a whole thing. Just tell her the schedule changed or the church capacity is limited or whatever. I just need her there for the wedding itself, not the rehearsal dinner. And honestly, if she brings that energy she always brings, it's going to be a nightmare for Steph's family. Also, Steph's nephew is doing the ring bearer now. Can you let Rachel know in a way that doesn't turn into a whole production? I don't need Noah crying in photos. I read it twice. The Rachel situation. My brother had texted my mother 3 weeks ago to ask her to manage me like a scheduling conflict. He had decided before I ever arrived, before Noah had ever driven up with his pillow and his pressed vest and his careful, practiced walk, that my son would not be in his wedding. And he had asked my mother to deliver the news in whatever way caused the least friction for him. And my mother, as she apparently had been doing for most of my adult life, had done exactly what he asked. He planned this, I said. Not a question. Yes. This wasn't a last-minute thing. He didn't suddenly decide 3 days ago. No, my father said. He decided before you ever left Penticton. I thought about Noah walking up and down our hallway in his pajamas. Am I holding it straight, Mama? I thought about the dress shoes I had ordered online, and the ironing I had done that morning, and the $400 in hotel costs, and the half-day of work I had taken off. I thought about every time my brother had been given a pass my entire life, every time something had been explained away, every time my mother had told me I was being too sensitive, too difficult, too much. There's always some kind of tension when you're around. My mother's words from the parking lot, as though the tension were something I had imported, rather than something this family had manufactured and placed at my feet for 30 years. I want you to come inside, my father said. Dad, not for the rehearsal, not to make peace with Derek. I want you to come inside because there are things that need to be said tonight, and I am not willing to let this go the way I have let too many other things go. He held my gaze. His eyes were tired, but under the tiredness was something I had not seen in them very often. Resolve. The particular kind that comes not from anger, but from having finally decided something clearly. Can you trust me? He said. I thought about Noah in the back seat asking if his uncle didn't want him there. I thought about the way he had said I practiced a lot in a voice that wasn't complaining, just stating the truest thing he knew. Yes, I said. I trust you. He nodded once, and we walked up the steps and back through the door of St. Andrews. The church felt smaller than I remembered from childhood. The late afternoon light came in flat and gold through the tall windows. The bridal party was standing at the front near the altar. Stephanie in a pale pink sundress, my brother Derek beside her in gray trousers and a white shirt, their officiant gesturing through the order of service. About 30 people scattered through the first few pews, both families, aunts and uncles, Stephanie's parents who had flown in from Halifax. A few heads turned when we entered, a few polite smiles. My mother appeared from the left side almost immediately. I watched her face move through surprise, alarm, and the rapid gathering of composure. Robert, she said to my father, the word clipped and private. I'd like a moment, my father said clearly. Not loudly, just clearly, in the voice of a man who intended to be heard. The conversations nearest to us quieted. The officiant stopped mid-sentence. The silence spread the way silence does in a room with a high ceiling and good acoustics, rippling outward until even the rustling near the back pews had stilled. My brother turned around from the altar. When he saw me standing next to my father, his expression did something I hadn't seen it do before. It went perfectly controlled. The overperformed calm of someone who has been caught and is deciding in real time how to handle it. Dad, he said carefully, this isn't really the... I know you think that, my father said. He walked a few steps forward down the center aisle, so that he was speaking to the room, not just to Derek. I stayed near the back. I know you sent your mother a message 3 weeks ago asking her to manage the Rachel situation. He said the phrase without editorial, just the words exactly as they were. I know that she did what you asked, the way she has done what you've asked, consistently, for most of your adult life. Stephanie's mother had turned fully around in her pew. I could see her watching my father with a focused, evaluating expression. I have been a quiet participant in a pattern in this family, my father continued. And I want to be direct tonight, because directness is the thing we have been most consistently lacking. My mother said something sharp from the side aisle. My father didn't look at her. Rachel has been asking for basic consideration from this family for a long time. Not special treatment. Basic consideration. The kind that doesn't require a text message to coordinate her exclusion. Derek's jaw had tightened. I think this is something we should discuss privately. We have discussed things privately for 30 years, my father said. This is the outcome. He turned to me. I was standing very still near the back pew, and I had been absolutely certain I was going to hold it together. I was a person who held things together. I had built an entire identity around holding things together. I was not going to cry in a Presbyterian church in front of Stephanie's parents who had flown in from Halifax. I was crying in a Presbyterian church in front of Stephanie's parents who had flown in from Halifax. Not loudly, not dramatically, just my eyes doing what they do when a pressure that has been building for years suddenly finds a release valve. I stopped trying to stop it. I'm sorry I didn't come out to that parking lot this afternoon, my father said. I'm sorry it happened in front of Noah. I'm sorry it took me this long. Thank you, I said. It was the only thing I had. There was movement in the pews. Stephanie's father had said something quietly to his wife. My mother had moved toward my father with a hand on his arm and something urgent in her face. Derek had stepped down from the altar and was walking toward us. What none of them knew was what my father said next. I also want to say, while everyone is here, that I spoke to our family lawyer on Monday. He looked at Derek and his voice stayed even and absolutely clear. The cottage has been in informal transition for several years. Your mother and I have been maintaining it, making decisions about it, in a way that assumed it would eventually pass to you alone. That is not what my parents intended when they built it, and it is not what I intend now. The estate documents are being revised. The cottage will be left equally, as it always should have been. My mother said, Robert, this is not the place. I think it is, actually, he said, because if I wait for a better place, there will always be a reason it isn't the right moment. The silence in that church had a weight to it. Stephanie was standing at the altar with her hand over her mouth, looking at her fiancé. Stephanie's parents were very still. My aunts and uncles in the side pews were doing that particular thing people do when they are watching something significant and trying to decide whether to react to it or simply receive it. Derek looked at me. His expression was complicated in a way I hadn't expected. I had expected anger. I got something closer to the look of a person who has been running a particular game for a long time and has just seen the board changed. I didn't say anything to him. I didn't have to. My father looked at me and nodded toward the side door. I went. The garden behind Street Andrews was small and enclosed, stone paths between beds of late summer lavender and hostas, a shallow stone fountain in the center with water moving quietly over river rocks. The evening light was coming in low and golden, and the whole space smelled like warm stone and something sweet I couldn't name. Daniel was crouched near the base of the fountain. Noah was beside him, also crouched, both of them perfectly still, faces tipped toward the water. I walked across the garden toward them. Daniel heard me and looked up. He read my face in the way he always did, completely and without words. Okay, he said. My dad changed the cottage inheritance, I said, in front of everyone. Daniel was quiet for a moment. In front of Stephanie's parents from Halifax? In front of Stephanie's parents from Halifax. He exhaled slowly. Okay. He apologized. In front of. Yes. Daniel looked at me for a long moment. Then he stood up and put his arm around me, and I leaned against his shoulder and we both watched Noah, who had not looked up once during this entire conversation, because he had found something enormously important. Mama, Noah said, very quietly, without turning around. There is a frog. Yeah? A real one, not a toy. He's sitting on the rock. Don't scare him. I know, he said with dignity. I'm being patient. We stood there in the garden, the three of us, while the frog sat on the rock and Noah did not move a muscle. From inside the church, faintly, we could hear elevated voices, my mother's. Then Derek's, then a longer silence, then a door. Noah finally turned around, and his face in the golden evening light was purely satisfied. He jumped in, he announced. I watched the whole thing. That's a very good evening, Daniel said. I think so too, Noah agreed. I pulled him toward me and held him for a moment with my face in his hair, and he let me. And then he said, against my shoulder, can we go eat now? Grandpa said he guaranteed gelato. He did say that, Daniel confirmed. Then we should go, Noah said reasonably. We said goodbye to my father at the side gate. He held Noah, and told him he was the most patient frog watcher he had ever personally witnessed, which Noah received with enormous seriousness. He shook Daniel's hand for a long moment. He looked at me with those older, heavier eyes, and I saw in them something I had not always seen, the beginning of a different kind of honesty, the kind that comes too late to undo everything but arrives in time to matter. "I'll call you this week," he said. "I'll answer," I said. Derek did not come out. Stephanie did not come out. My mother was still visible through the window of the church, her back to the glass, talking to someone. We drove down to a gelato place on Water Street that Noah had seen from the car and issued a formal request for, and we sat at a table near the open door, with the lake visible at the end of the block and the evening cooling around us. Noah got mango again, because when something works, you commit to it. Daniel got dark chocolate, I got lemon, which was the right choice for the kind of day it had been. We sat there in the warm hum of that small place, the three of us, and Noah talked extensively about the frog and what he believed the frog's name probably was, and Daniel made up a complete biography for the frog on the spot that had Noah laughing so hard he nearly dropped his cone. I thought about the cottage, about the green shutters my grandmother had painted herself every spring, about the dock where I had learned to swim, the porch where I had watched the Perseids, the smell of cedar and lake water and sunscreen that I associated with every summer of my childhood. I had been told for years, in small casual ways, in the language of assumption and implication, that it was not quite mine, that it had been quietly allocated elsewhere, to someone who would appreciate it more, to someone who was more central, more important, more worth preserving. I sat with my lemon gelato, and I thought about that, and I let myself feel the full weight of it for once, without smoothing it over or deciding it wasn't worth the energy. Then I looked at Noah explaining to Daniel the precise diving technique of the frog, demonstrating with his spoon, absolutely luminous with it, and I put the weight down. My father called on Wednesday, as he said he would. He told me that the conversation with the lawyer had actually begun before the rehearsal, that he had been sitting with it for weeks, that the text he had shown me that evening had been, as he put it, the last clear confirmation of something he had already been privately coming to terms with for much longer. He told me that the cottage documents were being redrawn, equal shares, legally binding. He also told me something I had not known, that my grandmother's writing desk, the one that had been in her living room her entire life, the one I had learned to print my letters at sitting on a phone book, had been moved to Derek's apartment 3 years ago. My mother had arranged it quietly, on the logic that Derek had more space. When my father had asked about it, she had told him it was in storage. It was not in storage. It had been in Derek's spare bedroom for 3 years. I thought about that desk for a long time. 3 weeks after the rehearsal dinner, Daniel and I drove up to Kelowna and sat on the back patio of my father's house on a Saturday afternoon. My mother was not there. My father had asked to see us without her. He told me things he had not told me before, about the years I was working my way through my teaching degree while waitressing on weekends, about decisions that had been made around me, about me, without me, about the way my self-sufficiency had been used as an explanation for why I needed less. A reason, dressed up as a compliment. He stated it plainly, without softening it, and he let me respond however I needed to respond. I got angry. Sitting on that patio in the afternoon sun with a coffee I stopped drinking, I got genuinely angry in a way I had not allowed myself to be in years, because every time I had been angry before there had been someone there to tell me I was being too much, that I was making things complicated, that I needed to consider the bigger picture. My father sat across from me and did not manage it. He did not smooth it over. He let me be angry until I was done. That, I think, was the thing I had needed longest. The writing desk arrived in Penticton by moving truck 6 weeks later. No note, no card, just the desk, wrapped carefully in moving blankets, my name on the work order in my father's handwriting. We put it in the corner of our living room under the window that faces the backyard. The finish is worn in places from years of use, and there are small carved initials in the side panel that I traced with my finger as a child and have traced again now. My grandmother's initials, and below them, scratched in smaller letters, my grandfather's. The first morning after it arrived, Noah sat down at it before school. He wasn't doing anything in particular. He just sat there for a moment, running his hands along the surface the way you do with something old and real. "Whose was this?" he asked. "Your great-grandmother's," I said. "She used to sit here every morning and write letters." "To who?" "To everyone. Your great-grandfather when he was away. Her sisters, her friends." He thought about this seriously. "Maybe I could write letters," he said. "I think you absolutely could." He looked down at the surface of the desk and then up at me. "I'd need paper." "We have paper," I said. "Come on. You'll be late." He got up and thundered down the hallway in his sneakers in the way that seemed physically improbable for a child of his size, and I stood there for a moment longer looking at the desk in the corner with the morning light on it. Derek's wedding happened in September at a vineyard in the South Okanagan. My father attended, my mother attended. Daniel and I did not. We sent a card because whatever I thought of my brother and the choices he had made, I believed in being decent, and also because not sending a card would have required me to care more than I did. My brother texted me in January. It was a long text that had clearly gone through several drafts. It said things like, "I know I handled things badly and I think I've been competing with you in ways you never signed up for, and I'm not asking you to just move on." It also left out several things it should have included, but it was more honest than I had expected him to be, and I gave him credit for that. I sat with it for 5 days before I replied. When I did, I kept it short. I said I appreciated him sending it. I said I wasn't ready to act like the pattern hadn't existed. I said maybe we could build something eventually, but it would have to be something new, not a version of the old dynamic with different furniture. He replied, "I understand. I'm not going anywhere. I don't know what we become. I genuinely don't know whether the distance between us closes into something comfortable, something that feels like siblings the way I had imagined when we were small, making forts in the living room while our grandmother wrote letters at her desk. The world has more possible shapes than I used to let myself believe. What I know is this. The evening I stood in that church parking lot holding Noah's hand, watching my mother walk toward us with that particular expression on her face, I thought I was being left out of something. I thought I was standing at the edge of a room I wasn't allowed into. It took me longer than it should have to understand that the room was not actually somewhere I wanted to be. My father calls every Sunday now. He and Noah have an ongoing conversation about frogs that I have stopped trying to follow because it has developed its own internal logic and vocabulary. He showed up at Noah's soccer tournament in October in a rain jacket, stood on the wet sideline for 90 minutes in a drizzle, and cheered with an intensity that made the other parents give him respectful looks. Noah told me afterwards in the car very seriously, "Grandpa is very good at cheering." "He really is," I said. Daniel has been telling me for 3 years that I deserved better from my family. I knew he was right. I didn't always let myself know it. I know it now. And the desk is in the corner under the window. And some mornings when Noah is at school and the house is quiet, I sit at it with my coffee and I don't do anything in particular. Just sit there in the light, in the space that is entirely mine, and it is enough.